Jenna.
And I'm Laura.
We are back for part 2 of Mitrice Richardson. If you haven't listened to part 1, go listen to that, get caught up, and come join us back here for part 2. You definitely want to listen to part 1 first.
Yes, you definitely do. Don't miss that.
Have some blood boiling, and then we're just going to keep that going.
Okay.
All right.
Let's do it.
It's the early morning hours of September 17th, 2009. Mitrice Richardson walked out of the Lost Hills Sheriff's Station at 12:28 a.m. She turned and headed into the dark. And from that point forward, we are in the black box, the window of time where everything that happened to Mitrice, whatever it was, actually happened. And in that window, we have one confirmed sighting. At approximately 6:30 that morning, so roughly 6 hours after she was released, a man named Bill Smith spotted someone in his backyard. He was a retired KTLA news anchor. He and his wife, Karen, lived in Montanito, which is a small rural community of horse properties and private trails tucked into the canyons. This is about 5.5 to 6 miles west of the sheriff's station.
Wow. So she walked almost 6 miles through the mountains in the middle of the night?
That appears to be what happened. And if she did, she was navigating pitch black canyon roads, rugged terrain, no streetlights, no sidewalks, just dark hills and coyotes for 6 miles in the same clothes she'd been wearing at the restaurant. Karen told ABC7 that she and Bill saw someone from their upstairs bathroom window sitting on the railroad ties they had in their backyard. They're like these stepped garden ties that held in their flower boxes in the backyard. Karen called out, "Are you okay?" And the woman said, "Yes, I'm just resting." When Bill went to a different window to get a better look, the woman was gone.
Just like that. She's up and left.
In a matter of just a minute or so. Bill called the Lost Hills station and reported a prowler. He described her as, and this is from the recording, he said, quote, "a tall, slim black woman with afro hair, very skinny. I think she was wearing maybe jeans or tight pants and a t-shirt." The station dispatched a cruiser to the area and they didn't find her.
Okay. At this point, do they know that Mitrice is missing?
Well, that's the thing. The station had released her 6 hours earlier, and Bill Smith is calling to report a woman matching her exact description in his backyard 6 miles away. And nobody at the station connected the dots. Nobody said, wait, we just released a young woman who looked just like that with no phone and no ride into this area a few hours ago.
Is it the same people who were on shift when she left?
Some, the deputy that took her in had just finished a 17-hour double shift, so he wasn't there anymore. But some of the same people were still there.
Yeah, from midnight.
Yeah, like the overnight shift. It gets worse. The station didn't issue a be on the lookout alert or a bolo for another 6.5 hours after Bill Smith's call. By that time, it was the middle of the afternoon, and whatever trail existed had gone cold.
So between midnight and the afternoon the next day, so about, 14 hours? Nobody at the station thought to flag a vulnerable person they've released was unaccounted for?
Nobody.
Did they hear from her mom during that time at all?
Yeah, they did. She had called the station that morning expecting to come pick up her daughter because remember, she'd been told that Mitrice would be held overnight. Instead, she learned that she'd been released at 12:30 a.m. in the middle of the night and no one knew where she was. Mitrice had tried at that time to file a missing persons report, and that's when the station told her she had to wait 24 hours.
Did they check on the lot where her car was to see if she had made it there to pick up her car?
Her car was still there. She hadn't made it there.
Did the police station check on that at all?
I believe that they just knew that it was still there. I'm not sure if they specifically went to see if she had been able to get it, but it was still in the impound lot. When Bill called, like I said, they had sent a cruiser to his house. They didn't find anything. And now they're also telling her mom she has to wait a full day. They haven't connected the dots that the woman he called in about matched the description of this missing person that is entirely their fault, really.
That is awful.
Mm-hmm.
Negligent.
Yes. And the pattern continues with the actual search efforts because when the sheriff's department finally began looking for Mitrice, the decisions that were made and the ones that were not made are staggering. First, they waited 2 full days after they released her to even conduct a first search. 2 days in a missing persons case where they had a last known sighting and they know she has no resources and she is out on her own. And honestly, they should know she's also having a mental health crisis.
Why would they have waited 2 days? Did they ever give any explanation on why they waited so long?
Nope, it's never been adequately explained. When they did begin searching, rather than deploying scent dogs from the station, which is where she walked out the door to track which direction she went, they started at Bill Smith's house, treating that as the quote, last location seen. Now, searchers did find something at the Smith house. Outside the property, they matched footprints to the same Vans sneakers that Mitrice had been wearing. One of the trackers noted that the pattern suggested she had gone from walking to running.
Was she running from something? Did they find anything else track wise?
They don't know if she was running towards something, running from something, or just running. We don't know. But the prints and the scent that the dogs picked up both pointed in one direction. And then, fewer than 100 feet from Dark Creek, they lost the trail. The prints blended in with other shoe and also like hoof prints from horses, and the dogs lost the scent. Here's the critical detail. The officers didn't hike into Dark Canyon. They stopped.
So they just got to the end of the trail and stopped. They well, that's it.
Yep. They didn't go in. And if they had, Dark Canyon is where Mitrice's remains would be found almost a year later.
Wow. And they were right there.
They were right there. And this is where I need to talk about Sergeant Wright, because he's a name that the family and independent investigators have been pointing to for years. The more you learn about his role in the search, the harder it is to look away. Sergeant Wright was the team supervisor for Malibu Search and Rescue out of that Lost Hills station. He was in charge of directing all of the searches for Mitrice. And according to multiple sources, including Dr. Rhonda Hampton, who's a clinical psychologist, the one that Mitrice worked for, and also she became the family's most vocal advocate, she points to Wright's actions during the searches and says they were not just inadequate, they were suspicious. During that first search in 2009, the canine dogs picked up Mitrice's scent. They were moving in a direction, as we now know, led to where she would be found. And Wright stopped them. He pulled the dogs off the scent.
He stopped them before the trail went cold?
He did. And the search had been scheduled for 2 days. And after just 1 day, when the dogs had picked up the scent and were tracking in that direction, Wright made the decision not to bring them back for day 2. He said the dogs were too tired.
Oh, they're too tired to work after 1 day.
Yeah, too tired. The second day of the search was abruptly canceled. No further explanation given.
I don't even know what to say to that. You have canines picking up the scent for a missing person, and then you cancel the search because the dogs are tired, and you don't even go out. They didn't even have people going out looking without the dogs.
Right. It makes no sense. It makes you just enraged because if they had gone, the story could have ended so differently. It doesn't stop there. In January of 2010, so 4 months after Mitrice disappeared, the LASD staged one of the largest searches in department history. Over 300 trained search and rescue volunteers, ATVs, helicopters. They covered 18 square miles across the canyons and trails and ridges of the Malibu area, and they didn't find her. Now, Dr. Hampton was present during this search, and she asked Sergeant Wright a simple question: why aren't you searching the creek bed? She was specifically asking about the area in Dark Canyon where, as it would later turn out, Mitrice's remains were located. Wright's response was essentially noncommittal. He didn't direct the search there, and they didn't investigate it.
So it almost feels like he avoided the exact area where she was.
Yep. And it happened again. The family eventually secured a volunteer drone pilot to help with aerial searches. They brought this resource to the LASD for free and asked the department to use it. After being denied multiple times, the sheriff's department finally agreed, but Sergeant Wright took the meeting with the drone operator behind closed doors. He wouldn't let the family be present and directed the pilot to search areas that were, again, away from where her body would later be found. When Dr. Hampton asked Wright again why the drone wasn't being sent toward a specific area, the area near Dark Canyon, he told her, quote, "We'll get to it eventually."
We'll get to it eventually. Wow. Looking for a missing person where her footprints led that way.
Yep. And the scent
Makes
dogs.
no sense.
Yep. Exactly. And she'd already been missing for months at that point. That response is just so brash. Like, we'll get to it eventually.
Is it possible that this is just incompetence? He was really bad at his job or something?
I mean, that's a charitable interpretation. Honestly, it's one that the family and Dr. Hampton have struggled with because the alternate explanations are much darker. What I can tell you is this: multiple resources have described Wright's behavior as not just inadequate, but intentionally obstructive. He repeatedly and consistently steered search efforts away from the area where she would be found. The dogs had the scent. He pulled them off. The drone could have surveyed the canyon. He redirected it. Volunteers asked about searching that creek bed, and he brushed them off. Whether that was deliberate sabotage or just catastrophically bad search management, the outcome was the same. Mitrice wasn't found for almost a year.
And while all of that was going on, was the family doing their own search as well?
Yeah, they were. Dr. Hampton essentially shut down her psychology practice to focus on finding Mitrice. The family was out there canvassing neighborhoods, passing out flyers in Malibu, going door to door. They searched homeless encampments. They checked grocery stores. Mitrice, Michael, Dr. Hampton, they all threw themselves into it. And they did this while really encountering hostility. There were reports of racial hostility directed at the family as they searched in these Malibu neighborhoods.
Oh, so on top of searching for their missing daughter, now they're dealing with racism while they're searching for her.
On top of everything else. And meanwhile, a volunteer who participated in the LASD organized searches later communicated to Dr. Hampton that the department was not taking Richardson's disappearance seriously. The volunteers said that the LASD was focused on recovery efforts only, which, if you read between the lines, means they'd already assumed Mitrice was dead and weren't actually searching for a living person. The volunteer described the demeanor of the sheriff's department personnel during the search as, and this is a direct quote, like they were on a leisurely Sunday ride.
That's so sad and so unfair to Mitrice and her family. They're out there tearing themselves apart, trying to find her, and they're just meandering through their day.
And then in June of 2010, 9 months after Mitrice vanished, there was another search. This one was organized not by the LASD, but by private citizens. Maurice Dubois, whose teenage daughter Amber had been kidnapped and murdered in South California as well, came out to help. Over 100 volunteers searched the Montanido area of Malibu Canyon for over 2 days. They didn't find Mitrice, but they found something else, something deeply disturbing. In an isolated drainage culvert in the canyon, searchers discovered freshly painted murals, racially and sexually offensive graffiti depicting a nude African American woman, some of which, according to the family and searchers, bore a resemblance to Mitrice. The paint cans, brushes, and other materials were just left there at the scene.
Wow. Were they able to get anything from those things?
No. The family, the searchers, the advocates were all horrified, and they've maintained that the graffiti is connected to the case. So, just like in everything else of this story, authorities painted over it shortly after it was discovered.
They just painted over potential evidence in a missing person case and they just cover it up.
Mm-hmm.
No big deal.
Yeah, they painted over it. And I want you to hold all of this: the canceled searches, pulling the dogs off, the redirected drones, acting like this was not important, then covering up the graffiti. Hold on to it, because 2 months after that private citizen search, Mitrice was found. She wasn't found by the sheriff's department. She wasn't found by Malibu Search and Rescue. She wasn't found by Sergeant Wright. She was found by California State Park Rangers.
Of course she was. I'm glad that she was at least found.
Yeah, me too. But it shouldn't have been them finding her.
It shouldn't. No.
They were not looking for Mitrice at all. They were sweeping a remote canyon for illegal marijuana plants. And in a creek bed in Dark Canyon, 6.5 miles from the station, in the exact area that search dogs have been pulled from, that drones have been redirected away from, that Dr. Hampton had specifically asked about, they found the skeletal remains of a young woman. It was August 9th, 2010. Mitrice had been missing for almost 11 months.
Wow. Did they think she was there the whole time?
The condition of her remains suggested that she was probably there for 6 months or longer, which means while the LASD was running these massive searches and telling the family they were doing everything they could, Mitrice may have been lying in that canyon the whole time. So it's possible she was there longer. It was just hard with what was left.
Yeah.
To really nail down an exact timeline. But it is right where the dogs tried to go, and right where they really wanted the drone to go, right where that creek bed was that volunteers asked to go search. And what they found in that canyon, how they found her, and what happened next, it's even darker than everything we've talked about so far in this story. Isn't this one so, doesn't it make you so angry?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I want to warn you before we go into this. What I'm about to describe is a little bit graphic. It's difficult, and it involves real details about what was found in that canyon. I'm including them not for shock value, but because the condition of the remains and the way it was all handled are central to understanding another piece of why the family has never accepted the official narrative. So if you need to pause, we'll be here. Now, it's August 9th, 2010. It's been almost 11 months since Mitrice Richardson walked out of the Lost Hills Sheriff's Station. This story has been in the news. Mitrice appeared on the cover of People magazine in November of 2009. There had been massive searches, hundreds of volunteers, thousands of tips, and still nothing. On this day, a team of California State Park Rangers is hiking through a remote area of Malibu Canyon, deep in a place called Dark Canyon, near the community of Montanido. They're not looking for Mitrice. They are sweeping the area for illegal marijuana plants. And in a creek bed, under a layer of leaves and debris, they see something: a skull with curls of dark hair. They brush away the leaves, and there in the creek bed is an entire skeleton, partially mummified, completely naked. Her clothing, her belt, her bra, her jeans were scattered hundreds of feet down the ravine away from the body. Her skull and spinal cord were detached from the rest of her remains.
They were detached?
Yeah, detached. Now, that can happen through natural decomposition and animal activity over time, but it can also happen through other means. And combined with the rest of the scene, I mean, her clothing being flung hundreds of feet away, the remoteness of the location, it raises questions that the official investigation never adequately answers. The remains were later identified as Mitrice through dental records.
Could her clothes have been scattered by animal activity, do they think, or no?
It's possible. They were really far away though, and for just those to come off of her skeleton, while that is still basically all in the same place, it probably isn't from animal activity.
Okay. Where exactly was this? How remote are we talking?
Very remote. Dark Canyon is rugged terrain. It is steep, it's heavily wooded, it's not accessible by any normal path. Like you're not stumbling onto this spot on a casual hike. And here's the detail that's always loomed large in this case. The creek bed where Mitrice was found is directly adjacent to a 21-acre ranch that was known for producing pornography. The property is extremely secluded, but it has direct access to that creek bed.
Wow, right next to where she was found.
Yeah, right there. Now, no one has ever been able to prove a connection between that ranch and what happened to Mitrice, but the proximity has haunted investigators and her family for years. And there's one more detail about that canyon that I need to tell you. After Mitrice disappeared, residents in the area reported hearing screams coming from that part of the canyon several nights after she disappeared.
And that wasn't reported, I'm guessing.
Doesn't seem like it. And
If
if
you hear
it
screams
was,
in a canyon,
yeah,
let's
maybe
report it.
let's report it. And, if it was reported, maybe let's go investigate and
Yeah.
like look a little bit more. I don't know.
Yeah, all those things.
So, despite the screams, despite the scattered clothing, despite the condition of her skeleton, the proximity to the ranch, the official determination from the Los Angeles County coroner was that the cause of death was undetermined. And the sheriff's department maintained, I can't even, they maintained there was no evidence of foul play.
All of those things together, how do you say that for sure? How do you maintain that?
It makes no sense. And that is the question that has kept this case alive for over 15 years. The autopsy found no signs of trauma, no fractures, no bullet wounds, no evidence of stabbing. But here's the thing about skeletal remains that have been exposed to the elements for possibly nearly a year. A lot of evidence disappears. We have the decomposition, toxicology becomes impossible. Things like ligature marks, bruising, strangulation, none of that survives 11 months of decomp and animal scavenging. So when they say no evidence of trauma, what they're really saying is we couldn't find evidence of trauma on what was left. And that is not the same thing as saying nothing happened to her.
Totally. And that's a critical distinction there.
Right. It's the most critical distinction, and it's one the sheriff's department has never been willing to make. No evidence of foul play became their line, and they've held it ever since. Here's where the handling of the scene turns this from a tragedy into something that honestly continues to make all of this look a lot like a cover up. When the park rangers found the remains, they radioed it in. The Lost Hills Sheriff's Station was notified. Deputies and detectives arrived at the scene, and so did the Los Angeles County Coroner's Office, specifically Assistant Chief Coroner Ed Winter. Now, Mr. Winter looked at the scene He saw that what initially appeared to be just a skull and a few bones was actually an entire skeleton. He assessed the situation. He gave a direct order to the detectives on scene. Do not touch the remains.
Right. Standard procedure. Like you preserve the scene.
Absolutely. Completely standard. You don't move a body, especially skeletal remains, in a potential crime scene until the coroner's team has documented everything. The position of the bones, the relationship to the scattered clothing. They take soil samples, insect evidence, anything that might tell the story of how this person ended up here. That's forensics 101. And not only that, Winter was clear about it. He later told the Los Angeles Times, I specifically told detectives not to touch it.
So I'm guessing that they touched the remains.
Yeah.
Yeah. Of course they did.
After minutes, not hours, minutes, the sheriff's deputies had loaded Mitrice's remains into a helicopter and airlifted them to the Lost Hills Sheriff's Station.
Oh, so they didn't only touch her remains, they moved her whole body?
Yep. They moved her entire skeleton against the explicit order of the coroner, minutes after being told not to touch it. This case makes me so angry. I just can't imagine how angry her family must be. It is
totally.
totally unimaginable. Now, the coroner, Mr. Winters, said he was shocked. He told the press he had never given authorization to pick up the entire skeletal remains. He also said he couldn't recall another case in his career where a law enforcement agency moved remains without getting the coroner's clearance. He said that a California state code governing the coroner's authority over dead bodies had been violated.
And what was their excuse for doing this?
They said they were concerned about it getting dark. It was getting late in the day, and the animals might destroy what was left of the remains if they were left overnight.
Oh, okay. Because they hadn't been there for 6 months or more. But overnight, one more night is just not okay.
Right. And we don't have flashlights or floodlights or,
anything.
Yeah. So it's getting dark, and the context is just unbelievable. This is the same department that released this woman in crisis into the dark at 12:28 in the morning without a second thought. Darkness wasn't a concern then, but now when it comes to preserving a crime scene, now darkness is an emergency that requires immediate action against the coroner's orders.
Just the hypocrisy there is staggering.
Yes, it is.
Wow.
And someone at the LA Sentinel captured it perfectly. They wrote, and I'm paraphrasing, that all of the sudden the department was worried about Mitrice. They weren't worried about her when she was alive and walking out into the night. But now that she was dead, they moved heaven and earth to get her out of that canyon.
Was there any kind of fallout from them moving her remains?
Significant fallout, but still probably not enough. First, when the coroner's investigators went back to the scene the next day, the deputies couldn't lead them back to the right spot. They couldn't find the exact spot where the remains had been.
So they lost the crime scene now.
They couldn't lead investigators back to it. It was roughly 2 weeks before another search of the ravine turned up additional bones. And here's what that means. For 2 weeks, any remaining evidence of the scene, the relationship between the body and the clothing, soil disturbance, any trace evidence was exposed to weather, to animals, to contamination. The integrity of the scene was gone. Mr. Winter acknowledged that the cause of death likely would have been undetermined regardless, given the condition of the remains. But he said the investigation could have been so much more thorough, and the family, rightfully, argued that by moving the body without authorization, the department destroyed whatever chance they had at a more complete forensic picture.
I'm guessing it's going to get worse, doesn't it? Because that's this whole case, just one misstep after another.
That when you think it can't get worse, it does. Months later, Sheriff Lee Baca personally led Lettice and members of the family to what he said was the site where Mitrice's remains were found. a kind of solemn visit, a chance for closure. And while they were there, a family member found a small human bone just lying on the ground, left behind by whoever had recovered the remains or by the team that went there after. A small piece of her skeleton just sitting in the dirt.
Wow. I've said that so many times, but just
there are no
what else?
words.
There are no words. How can you? How? And how horrible for her family.
And then, after communicating with the coroner's office, her mom came to believe that the site that he had taken them to was not actually the correct location, that they'd been brought to the wrong spot.
So they went to visit her last known location and they took her to the wrong place.
That's what the family alleges. And Mitrice later included this in a second lawsuit against the county. And then there's the matter of the clothing. Her recovered clothing, the clothing that was scattered hundreds of feet from her body, went missing from evidence at some point during the investigation.
So then they lost her clothing out of evidence.
The clothing went missing. The one set of physical evidence that might have told us something about how she ended up in that canyon, whether it was removed by her or by someone else, whether there was any kind of tearing, whether there was DNA from another person, gone, missing from the chain of custody.
Everything, like you said, feels like some kind of cover up. It just is mistake after mistake. And it just looks like something else.
Because it's hard to believe they could be that bad at their job. And that's what the family has been saying for 15 years, that this is not negligence, that what happened to Mitrice from her release from custody to the search to the discovery to the handling of everything after is a pattern of evidence being lost, hidden, moved, destroyed, or mishandled at every single critical juncture. And every time the department has an excuse. And every time the excuse is not even good. It doesn't hold up. You can believe that every one of these failures was an independent accident, that nobody talked to anybody, that the video was in a desk drawer, maybe by an honest mistake, that the dogs really were just too tired, that the payphone just happened to be broken and nobody knew it, that they moved the body because of the dark, that the clothing just disappeared. You can believe all of that was a coincidence.
But can you believe all of it put together?
Right.
When you put all of it, if it was just one thing, maybe. But every single thing there, no way.
No way. Exactly. After Mitrice's remains were identified in August of 2010, the fight didn't end. In some ways, it was just beginning. Her family, who had already spent 11 months searching, pleading, organizing, and being stonewalled, now had to fight for accountability and for answers. For someone, anyone in a position of power to say what happened to Mitrice Richardson was wrong, and here's what we're going to do about it. And unfortunately, they're still fighting.
So what happened after the discovery? What legally, institutionally, what came of all of this?
A few things, and none of them were enough. First, the lawsuits. Mitrice's parents sued Los Angeles County separately. They alleged negligence and wrongful death, arguing that the deputies never should have released Mitrice given her obviously disturbed condition. In 2011, they reached a settlement and each parent was awarded $450,000, so for a total of $900,000.
So that's not nothing, but it's definitely not justice.
No, it's not. And Mitrice was very clear about that. She said the settlement wasn't about money. She didn't want people to think she was trying to dupe Los Angeles out of any sums, which were her words. She settled in part to get the attorneys paid and to avoid putting her family through a prolonged trial. But the settlement came with no admission of wrongdoing from the county, no admission that anything had been done wrong. Now, Mitrice also filed a second lawsuit specifically about the handling of Mitrice's remains. the deputy moving the body against the coroner's orders, and that fight continued for years.
What about like an internal review?
The county's Office of Independent Review, which is the OIR, issued a report on the case. Their conclusion was that the deputies of the Lost Hill station acted, quote, properly and legally in releasing Mitrice.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Their exact words. The report was immediately and widely criticized. It didn't mention the Lieutenant Chu email, the one where the deputy admitted that he was uneasy about releasing her. It didn't address the fact that the surveillance video had been hidden and kept in Martin's desk drawer for months. The OIR didn't even conduct interviews with the deputies and the jailer who had direct contact with Mitrice. They reviewed documents and they issued a conclusion. And that conclusion was everything was fine.
That phrase that keeps coming up in this case.
Yeah, the phrase that haunts this entire case. She was fine. Everything was fine. They're fine. They acted properly. Everything is fine, fine, fine.
What about a criminal investigation?
That's where it gets even more frustrating. The family pushed for the California Attorney General's office to review the sheriff's department's handling of the case. In November 2015, so 6 years later, after reviewing about 500 pages of documents, the office of then Attorney General Kamala Harris replied that they found no grounds for criminal charges against the sheriff or his deputies. They also found no evidence that the department mishandled the family's complaints.
So that was it?
Not quite. In January of 2016, in what seemed like a stunning reversal, the Attorney General's office announced that it was opening a criminal investigation into the case. And so that was only about 2 months later. And for a moment, it felt like something might actually happen.
And did anything happen?
In January 2017, the Attorney General's office concluded that there was insufficient evidence to support criminal prosecution of anyone involved in the handling of the case.
So no one was ever held accountable for this?
No one, not a single person, not a deputy, not a jailer, not a supervisor, not a captain, has ever faced criminal consequences for what happened to Mitrice Richardson. Every deputy involved has either been transferred, promoted, retired, or some combination of all three.
Has there ever been like a person of interest or anything like that in this case?
Well, in 2024, there's a podcast called Lost Hills, which was hosted by Dana Goodyear, who is a writer for The New Yorker. She released a new season that focused entirely on Mitrice's case. After years of investigative reporting, they revealed something significant. That investigators had, at one point, suspected foul play, and that they had identified a person of interest, a local man in the Montanito community who is now deceased, who was rumored to have been the last person to see Mitrice alive.
Oh, but he is deceased now, so they can't really do a lot with that, right?
Right. The podcast reported that neighbors claimed to have seen this man with Mitrice, and that a suitcase containing women's undergarments was found at his camp in the woods, items that were never properly tested or even investigated. The podcast team uncovered new witnesses and new information tying this person of interest to Mitrice. They also found new evidence that had never been pursued. Now, I want to be careful here because there's been significant debate about these findings. So, independent journalist Cece Woods at the local Malibu has pushed back on the podcast framing. She argues that the story is more complicated and that a premature focus on one suspect can create a false sense of closure. And she's right that this case is far from solved, but the fact remains there was a person of interest, there was potential evidence, and it was never followed up on.
Yeah, because the department's position was no foul play, right?
Exactly. Yes. And if you start from the conclusion that there's no foul play and an undetermined manner of death, you don't investigate foul play. And if you don't investigate foul play, you don't find evidence of foul play. And then the absence of evidence becomes the evidence. It's circular, and it's exactly how cases just fade and are never closed, but never really open.
And how does this case stand right now?
This case remains officially open with the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. However, though, it's classified as a death investigation, not as a homicide. The coroner's ruling is still that undetermined. The LA County Board of Supervisors, who's led by Supervisor Holly Mitchell, has reestablished and increased the reward for information. So right now it stands at $25,000 for any information leading to the arrest and conviction of whoever may be responsible for Mitrice's disappearance and death. Holly Mitchell said something that I think captures the heart of this case. She said, she was a woman who needed to be protected, and that simply didn't happen.
And that's it. That's the whole thing here. This could have been totally prevented if they would have just not released her from the station.
Yep, that is the whole thing. And I need to tell you one more thing because it's what makes this story even harder to tell right now. Mitrice, who was Mitrice's mother, the woman who called that station that night, who begged them not to release her daughter, who predicted almost word for word what she was afraid would happen, who searched, who pushed, who advocated for her daughter, who fought with the sheriff's department for over a decade. She passed away on September 12th, 2025. She was 57 years old. She died without ever learning what happened to her daughter, without ever seeing anyone held accountable. She died 5 days before the 16th anniversary of the night that Mitrice walked out of that station.
Oh, that's so sad.
Her obituary lists her survivors, her husband, Larry, her younger daughter, her stepson, and among those who preceded her in death, her grandmother, Mildred, the woman who was on the phone with Mitrice at Geoffrey's that night, and her daughter, Mitrice. An editor at the local Malibu wrote after her passing that Mitrice Sutton passed away without resolution to the disappearance and death of her daughter, and that, quote, the only solace is in knowing that Mitrice's religious conviction was such that she spoke about being reunited with her daughter someday, end quote. This case, I don't know how to wrap this up neatly because it doesn't wrap up neatly. There's no resolution, there's no arrest, there's no conviction, there's not even a cause of death, and no one officially to blame. But I can tell you that on September 16th, 2009, a young woman who was brilliant and beautiful and driven and loved walked into a restaurant in Malibu, and every person she encountered saw that she wasn't okay. The valet, the hostess, the server, the manager, they all saw it. Her grandmother saw it. Her mother saw it. A stranger at the restaurant said she wasn't safe to be on her own. And then she was handed over to the people whose job it was to protect her. And they let her go into the dark, alone, with nothing. And when she disappeared, they waited, they stalled, they hid footage, they pulled search dogs off her scent, they moved her body against orders, they lost the crime scene, they lost evidence, and at every step they said she was fine. And Mitrice was not fine, and she deserved so much better than what she got.
She really did. And it's really sad and unfair and unjustified that all of that happened because everyone else saw it. Mm-hmm. Everyone else told them. Everyone else said something. They spoke up. They called the police. They asked them to hold her. They did all the right things. And still she walked out in the middle of the night with nothing.
Yep.
And it's horrible.
It is.
It's horrible.
It's horrible. And no one is ever held accountable.
Yeah.
There's
just wasn't our fault. She was fine.
Yeah, she was fine. It's fine. were fine.
I don't know how with the internal review that you can even look at the video that they have of her in the jail and say that their testimony saying she was fine and normal is correct. How can you think that when you can see it on the video, in her mugshot, all the things?
Yes.
And they're like, no, that's good.
They got caught lying so many times.
Yeah.
And like the internal review, they're the ones handing over the evidence that they want to be part of it. Like, I don't understand how that happens.
Yeah. Sad.
And it's just so unsatisfying as an ending still.
Yeah.
I mean, this long later, it's awful.
It is.
Now, if you have any information about the disappearance and death of Mitrice Richardson, the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department is asking you to come forward. You can contact them at 323-890-5500. You can also call Crime Stoppers anonymously at 1-800-222-8477, which is TIPS. There's also that $25,000 reward for information leading to an arrest and a conviction. Mitrice was someone's daughter, someone's granddaughter, great-granddaughter, someone's girlfriend, someone's friend. She had a degree in psychology and a dream of helping people. She was 24 years old. She had a whole future ahead of her. So if you know something, anything, please report it. Please say something.
Yes, and this was a heavy one. So thank you for listening with us and making it to the end here.
And finally, if you or someone you know is experiencing a mental health crisis, you can call or text 988. That's the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. They're open anytime, day or night, 24/7. You can also text HOME, HOME, to 741-741 to reach the crisis text line. You don't have to go through it alone.
And if this episode hit you the way it hit us, share it, not for us, but for Mitrice. The more people who know her name, the harder it is for this case to stay in the dark.
Thank you so much for joining us for this episode. If you want to read more about Mitrice or see the resources that we used to create this episode, you can find that on our blog, which is on our website, crimeclueless.com. If you have a second, we would be so grateful if you would take a moment to rate, review, or share our podcast. Your support helps us reach more listeners and grow our community. We're so grateful for every rating always. It means the world to us, and it really does help more than you know. You can find Crime Clueless on Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, YouTube, all streaming platforms. Also, we're on socials. Connect with us. We are at Crime Clueless on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube. Everywhere's the same. We would love to hear your thoughts or feedback, as well as any cases you want us to cover. And as always, remember, refuse to be clueless, careless, or caught off guard.
Not today, murders.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye, everybody.